Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Clark. I'm the Operations Coordinator with the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And please let me be the first one to welcome you to today's first in a series of trainings for survivors' financial empowerment based on the Allstate Foundation Moving Ahead curriculum. Before I hand things over to today's presenter, Naseem Sarabandi, Project Coordinator at the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, I'm going to go over just a few housekeeping items for today's webinar. All lines are going to be muted throughout today's presentation, so we do ask that any questions be posed in the chat box. Please also feel free to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat box, as well as your name, your organization, and your title, or whatever information you'd like to share. We are recording today's webinar, and a link to the recording, as well as materials mentioned and a copy of the presentation, will be shared in a follow-up email. There is also a link in the chat box to access these materials if you would like them at hand for today. We are also providing ASL interpretation for today's webinar, and they will be the featured video throughout today's presentation. And with that, I will hand it over to NISCATIV Project Coordinator, Naseem Sarabandi, to begin.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I really appreciated your help and all the tech support to help us to smooth the way to start and present this webinar. I also want to thank you, everybody that is attending and participating today. And also thank you, our interpreter. I'm really appreciative of their work. I'm Naseem Sarabandi, Project Coordinator at New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, presenting today's first module of the Allstate Foundation Moving Ahead curriculum. And I also lead the project, the Economic Empowerment Project of the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We started this project in 2019, and our funding source is Allstate Foundation. And we receive a lot of technical assistance and training and support from National Network to End Domestic Violence Economic Justice Project. As you all know, Allstate Foundation and NNEDV have developed this curriculum. It's many years old, but it has gone through many revisions and it has been updated actually recently. So in the economic justice, economic empowerment project of the coalition, we have a competitive grant process that it happens in the summer. We choose 3 domestic violence service providers as our sub-grantees, and they usually focus on different areas of financial empowerment, including the credit or employment or match savings. And of course, there's also always about financial planning or budgeting. Before going into the modules or curriculum, I really want to send a big thank you to Allstate Foundation for their continuous support through the year of 2020. They not only supported our project, they also provided us with a crisis relief grant, which was really helpful for the coalition. So we are very appreciating of their continuous support. What is in the curriculum, in the Moving Ahead curriculum? Well, the curriculum has 5 modules, which we are presenting on the first one today. And the other 3 sessions that we scheduled every Thursday of the February at 11 a.m. are going to be about the other modules. In the first modules, we are going to talk about understanding economic abuse, the safety planning, divorce, child support. And then in the second one, we will cover budgeting, banking options, assets and liabilities. And in the third one, we will cover credit score, credit report, how to improve the credit, and more information about bankruptcy. In the fourth module, it covers financial paperwork, housing options, mortgages, and the car loans. And then in the fifth one, which is about long-term planning and includes saving for your education, investment, retirement, and insurance. I just want to mention that in the last webinar, we are going to combine the fourth and fifth module and in one webinar. So the first module covers the topics of financial abuse and understanding that, how to safety plan for the advocates, a lot of information about separation and child support, and also how to hire an attorney, and information about identity theft and some resources, and New York State specific information. These information are specifically for the advocates who are working in the programs in the New York State. This information might exist, or rights or privileges might exist in other states, but definitely advocates from other states need to research, talk to an attorney or a lawyer about their options, and provide their state-specific information. So before jumping to the content of the curriculum, we prepared some small quiz or questions for you, which we would be appreciate to know your thought about them, and share what you think about these questions. So the first questions is about, please write in the chat box the one word that comes to your mind when you're thinking about money. Savings, bills, independence, privilege, power, control. Yeah, these are all perfect answers. Opportunity, bill payments, debt, budgeting, retirement. Yeah, mismanagement, happiness, relief. Sorry, the chat box is moving so fast. I'm trying to catch up. Emergency funding, basic necessity. These are perfect answers. There's a lot of, when we think about money and we think about our income and everything, there's like different things that in the back of our mind that appear, and it shows what we think, or what are the messages that we know about the money. So in the second question, can you please share with us any specific messages that you have received growing up about money? Like what kind of messages you got when you were a kid or you were a teenager from your family? Save it, spend wisely, yeah, always be saving, work, lack of self-awareness, yeah, be smart, it doesn't grow on the tree. That's true. Yeah, these are wonderful answers. I really appreciating these answers. Live in your own terms. Yeah, money gives you power, gives you independence, streams revenue. Yeah, be knowledgeable. These are wonderful answers. Necessity, spend cautiously. Yeah, these are wonderful. Yes, we receive all these messages, and we have received them, we have grown up with them. So my next question is kind of actually related to this question. As an advocate who have worked with survivors, what kind of messages do you think that survivors have received from their abuser? It's not theirs, even if they earned it. Yeah, you can make it on your own. I'm in control. This is mine. Controlling the money. You need me. You don't deserve the money. These are wonderful answers. What is yours is actually mine. Yeah, they were not in the controlling of their money. The guilt, nothing, you're nothing without me. That's very right. You're too stupid to handle the money. These are all the good answers. Yeah, this is the answers that I was actually looking for. As you can see, as an advocate that works with a survivor, and as a person, actually human being, we all receive different messages around money. You know, in our traditions, in our culture, in our family or household, and we need to unpack these messages that trigger survivors, and we need to do that very slowly. We need to be aware of how these messages has impacted them so far and by today, and how we can actually unpack them and work on the confidence of the survivors around money. The survivors received mixed messages, negative and positive, as us as human beings. So in the last question of this part, I want to just ask you, what have you learned about managing your own finances? How to prioritize, the importance of saving, yeah, being control, planning, always plan ahead, spend on what you need only, budgeting. These are wonderful. I feel like all the advocates here today at this webinar, they know a really good amount of information about the financial planning. Live within your means, yeah, prioritizing, protect your credit card debts. Independence is wonderful. These are wonderful answers. Thank you so much, everyone, for your sharing. Um, and this was very informational. That shows that all the advocates who are here are actually having some information about financial planning. So with that, we are gonna unpack the topic of economic abuse. Financial abuse is a tactic that has been used by abusers to control victims by preventing, limiting access to money or other financial resources. It often begins very quietly and softly and progresses over the time. And like any other tactic of abuse, it tries to gain and maintain power and control. Um, Financial abuse is one of the main reasons that survivors of domestic violence cannot leave the abusive relationship, or they return to an abusive relationship. So you can imagine how this actually limits and restrict their ability to change or progress in their life. And one thing I want to actually focus on here is putting all this information in the context. And we know that in different type of relationship, in different type of marriages, there is many forms of financial arrangement. The partners might decide that because one partner is having, overspending behaviors, they would limit or put an allowance for one partner. But this is actually something mutually agreed, and things are transparent. So if the partner has any questions about where the money goes or where the money comes from, there is no hiding, there is no fearing, there is no coercive behavior. And that's why the power and control doesn't exist. And this is different from a case of financial abuse, when the fear and coercive behavior exist. We provided to the link and the PDF, I think, to this economic abuse, power and control bill credited to Florida Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And the bill actually explains how economic abuse actually engages and involves many different parts of survivors' life. It engages their workplace and employment, their education, their credit, child support and child care, their public assistance, and also any legal issues that may cause them. So as you can see, financial abuse has different aspects that would really make a lot of issues for the survivors. So here I would like to ask you as a participant to share with us any financial abuse tactics that it comes to your mind when you're thinking about the financial abuse. If you have worked with survivors, what kind of tactics you have seen? Not allowing someone to have a job, very good answer. Abuser controls victims' income, no access to accounts, sending bills, hiding money accounts with one partner's name, identity theft, not allowing for the money, giving small allowances, taking their wages, even their SSI, yeah, again, identity theft, taking money away, hidden hidden accounts, yeah, has to ask for the money for everything they spend, forcing shared accounts, yeah, take from the other's account, claiming, taxes, sabotaging any job opportunities, yeah, taking debit card. These are wonderful answers. I think everybody's here kind of familiar with different tactics of the financial abuse. I really appreciate all these answers. So I have categorized this to sorry, I think something's happening to the slides. I have categorized these to nine tactics, and it's on the also Allstate Foundation curriculum, so you can read it there too. The first tactic is stealing money from you and your family member, which can be in forms of stealing cash or like overspending on the credits and on your money. The next one is forcing you to work or hand over any income, assets, or benefits you have. So you go to work, you earn money, but then the money is not yours. The next one is forbidding you from working or getting an education. So you probably need to get a job or go to school or having some courses to progress in your job, but they wouldn't allow that. Interfering with your job or work performance, which we've seen it a lot. It's not that survivors of domestic violence cannot find a job or cannot be employed. The fact is, like in some of the cases, survivors gets the job, but then abusers really shows up at the job, or it start threatening the co-workers, and that way it really interferes with their job, so they leave the job, the survivor. Controlling how money is spent, making all financial decisions, withholding financial information. And that's what I'm talking about, hiding. There is like different line of credit that you are not even aware of, or in money that you are not aware of. The next one is forcing you to sign or file fraudulent legal documents or benefits, which we have seen it a lot in our work with the survivors. Overusing credit cards or refusing to pay the bills. They have the control on the money, but they are not paying the bills, and your bills pile up. The next one is preventing you from obtaining or using credit or bank cards. So you cannot open your own account. You can have any control on your credit. And even if there's an argument, they would say, oh, we have a joint account. You don't need your own account, which is completely wrong. Threatening to report you for cheating on your benefits, which we have seen it in cases that survivors of domestic violence receive public benefits too. So if you are seeing all these tactics and we know all about it, but how to start working with survivors? What is the steps that we are taking, and we need to go through with the survivors of domestic violence? And the one point that I really want to focus on here is it's advocates considering the trauma that every person, every survivor that comes into your contact has gone through, because they have been questioned for every dollar they have spent, you know. So we as an advocate, when we are working with the survivor, we don't need to be judgmental, you know. If they are spending some money for their, um, um, for their enjoyment, to going to Target, some $20, $40 spending on the kids. The fact that we even want to limit that might become kind of like judgmental, but we just need to help them to show how to lower those costs, or expenses. The first thing is assessing the financial condition of your client. Um, in the materials or handout that we are giving you, there is a form about this assessment. You can use it in your work with the survivor to understand where they are standing financially. And the next step is introducing the survivor to all state curriculum. This curriculum is very comprehensive. I would recommend to advocates to read the curriculum, know about it, know where to refer a survivor to, because for a survivor who's just giving a big booklet, it might not be useful, maybe the survivor just needs to know about credit or needs to know about the financial planning, so which module to refer them and what are the information they need to know. And after counseling with the survivor, if they feel comfortable, support them to run their credit report. And this is very important. I will focus on that in the next module. In the third module, how to run the credit report. But I've heard of many, many cases that survivors have found a new line of credit on their name, or a new debts that they didn't know about it, or wrong information in their credit report. So this is a very important steps with survivors. And the next step is reviewing their budget. What are their income, the incoming income, and what is their expenses and costs. The next step is a survivor needs to identify short-term and long-term goals. And this depends on where survivor are standing in their relationship. If they are just right now with the abuser and still living with them, they probably need mostly short-term planning, and long-term planning comes afterwards. And the next one is limiting their costs and expenses. This can be, a situation. For instance, we know that we need some basic needs in our house or in our household, and we can help a survivor, instead of going, every week to a grocery shopping. Just like, help them to get a BJ's or Costco card, which where they can buy things in a bigger portion, but with a cheaper price. So that way we are actually give them some guidance, but we shouldn't limit them on how to spend their money. We need to just guide them about the way that they can spend a little bit cheaper. Find out if they need to find a job. Do they have a job, or do they need to change their job? Is there any unemployment or child support they receive? And the next one is here that I will explain this in the third module again, it's about improving their credit history. And for that, there is a project with the National Network to End Domestic Violence, which calls Independence Project. It's a macro loan project that survivors can apply for it. And I will talk about it in the third module. Sorry, I'm getting a sip of water. So safety planning, how to start the safety planning. The first step is, as I mentioned before, we need to work on the confidence of the survivors around money. We, as an advocate, some of us don't have that much confidence. So we can imagine that people around us, they are in the same boat, or survivors, they are in the same boat. But the fact is, the knowledge about the money and finances is free. It exists online. There is so much information. There is this curriculum. So the more they learn, the more they are gonna gain their confidence about how to budget and plan. And the other thing is, as an advocate, we need to talk to a survivor about their decision. If they are staying in the relationship or abusive relationship, we need to think about it. If they are taking all these steps for their financial independence, what happens if the abuser discovers that they are taking all this, actions, and what would be the best safety planning or form of safety planning. And the next one is trying to get as much as information about their assets and liabilities. We can ask survivors to make an inventory and picture of their assets. What do they have? And write down a list of it, and make a copy of the important documents they have, like their marriage license, birth certificate, if they are immigrants, their immigration papers, benefits, insurance, pay stub, social security card. These are all the things that they need to see if they have it, or if they don't have it, where to, obtain them. The next step is saving money. They can save changes from groceries, or open a bank account, probably not letting the partner or the abuser knowing about that. And if they have a joint bank account, is there any way that they can withdraw some money from that safely? That the way that like abuser wouldn't find about it. And the next one is working towards their financial independence, so they can open their own account or their own line of credit card, and how to do that safely. The next slides actually talks about the order of protection. As an advocate, we are all familiar with order of protection. We know that it's a good measure to protect survivors and their children from further abuse. But how many of us know that the order of protection comes with some financial relief? For instance, it can come with the child support, spousal support, mortgage or rent payment, or temporary possession of the property, such as a car, clothing, or requires abuser to continue paying insurances. This financial reliefs, it really depends on each state. And I would encourage you to search on your own state and see what is in there. In the next slides, at the and the other part about separation and child support, I would provide information mostly about New York State, and what kind of relief is available with order of protection. But in the resources section of this slides, I provided copied a matrix document from one of the national programs, that you can see what kind of financial relief is coming with your order of protection in your own state. What about safety planning around housing? We know that survivors need to decide if they are staying, if they are going to a shelter, if they are living with a family or friends that they trust, or they are gonna start searching for houses if they are able. But we know that housing complexes, they usually run credit report, and credit report writes down the addresses. So the thing is, abuser can find the location of the survivors that way if they have access to credit reports. So the best solution for that, it would be in a situation that survivors has a copy of their credit report or copies of it in their own hand when they are searching for housing, or they can search in private housing, like they can search not big complexes, or somewhere that there's like there's a basement, or there's like a 1 bedroom in a house, or 2 bedrooms, something like that. The next step is technology safety. We need to be aware that a lot of information exists about us online. If you Google yourself on one of these websites, you will be very surprised by the amount of information that is there for about you. So make sure you are changing your password. And limit your public information on the website. You also can set up news alerts to send you notification if your name, address, or phone number has been used on the internet. And you can do that by setting a news alert on Google. What about the workplace? What do we do in the workplace? And it's actually for the survivor, it's a decision that they need to take. We need to ask them, do they feel comfortable, or do they think that their workplace is safe or is going to be responsive if they share the information with them? And if they say yes, we can give the employer they can give the employer a copy of their order of protection, abuser's name or picture, and you can ask them to block specific numbers if abuser calls from specific numbers. And the other thing is, we need to make sure that the workplace check with survivors if someone shows up to meet them or wants to have an appointment with them, or they get a referral with for a new client, because that new client actually might be the abuser or partner. What are the workplace rights in New York State? What survivors of domestic violence can have, because they have been victimized in the domestic violence situation. So in New York State, employers are required by the law to provide time off as reasonable accommodation to DV survivors. So if a survivor needs to seek medical care for injuries caused by DV, they need to go to counseling. They need to go to DV shelter program or rape crisis center, or they need to participate in any safety planning to increase their own safety for future incident, or they need to obtain legal services and that would assist them in the prosecution of the offense or appear in the court in relation to their case. These are all the cases that the employers in the New York State are required to provide accommodation. And a lot of the employers usually provide this accommodation by advance notice. If the advance notice is not possible for the survivor and it happens out of nowhere and they have to take time off, the employer might actually require some documentation to certify that. And this documentation can be a document from the advocate or counselor or medical professional or court order or police report. So and these are all the way that employers should actually provide the accommodation. And the employers are all required to keep the information very confidential and not sharing with any parties. Going to the separation and child support and divorce. One thing that I always tell to people about the financial abuse is it's really important to have an attorney. We highly recommend, because domestic violence is as complicated as it is. And then there is the cases of, financial abuse. There is sometimes children or child in common. So having an attorney is very important. This is not just a simple divorce. And survivors can represent themselves as a per se in the court, but it's not recommended. And it's important to have a professional that can represent them. But how do we find attorneys? How do we go to find attorneys? Well, the first place to check is the local domestic violence programs. They usually have some partnership. Sometimes they even have lawyers or attorneys on the premises, in their program. And they have partnership with legal aid societies, law schools, bar associations, or they know referrals. Sometimes even the clerk of the court know referrals, or there is attorney referral services under the yellow pages. It has a little bit of charge, like $30 per referral fees, but these are all the options. For the advocates in the New York State, they can check the Civil and Legal Services Network. This is a place that they can, get more information and attorneys for the victims, and ask for more help, which I provided the link here on this slide. But hiring a divorce attorney can be costly. They pay, they charge per hour. But how much they charge? This is the first basically questions that we need to ask. And attorneys usually require a retainer, which is like an upfront single pay. And we need to know how much is that. And the survivor also needs to have an agreement with an attorney on specifying the terms. And they shouldn't be afraid to, negotiate the terms, because negotiation is actually like something free. It might go somewhere, or it might not, but it's very helpful. But as I mentioned, hiring an attorney, it can be costly. So the more we are prepared before meeting an attorney, it will save us time and money. And if we have like past income tax returns prepared, a copy of that, pay stubs of ourselves and our partners, or copies of the partner's employee benefits if we have access to, and wish list of assets that the survivor would like to keep. So these are all the things that they can, prepare before meeting with the attorney. They can also make a list of possessions, what they own, what the partner owns, and what is the jointly ownership. What do they have in joint, and determine their living expenses of themselves and their children. They have to consider that. And the next step is also dividing their assets and liabilities. Liabilities is any debts that they have, like their credit card debts. And assets are the items that actually they're paying off on it, but and there's some protection, like there's a housing or car. So that's what we call the assets. What about child support? And what are the options in New York State? As I mentioned, survivors have a very good actually option in the New York State, which they can ask for. We know that survivors who have children in common with the abuser, family court is the one that determines the custody, the custody of the children. But in a situation that survivors is still in a relationship, is not divorced, but they escape or they flee the abusive relationship, court can give the temporary custody to survivor and order a temporary child support with the order of protection. So I would really recommend to survivors to explore these options, to advocate to know about this. This child support can cover regular expenses involving raising a child, which is education, insurance, any medical bills. It also, I have to say here that people who are already receiving public assistance under the TANF or Medicaid or any federally assisted foster care programs, they are automatically referred to be for the child support enforcement. And the reason that I mentioned this here, it's because uh, maybe in situation that survivor is in it, having or establishing paternity for the child support will put the survivor in danger, and and applying for the for all the child support. Um, that way, we need to be aware of that. If that happens automatically, they need to prevent it. And sometimes the recipient, they can be excused from participation in some requirements for applying for TANF benefits and child support based on a good cause. And this good cause can be domestic violence. I will explain this more in the next slide, but I want to say that New York State and a lot of other states, New Jersey, a lot of other states, they have family violence option. This family violence option waives the requirement for receiving TANF benefits and child support. But how does it work? So in the local social services districts, there is a domestic violence liaison that would assess the situation of the survivor. And if they find it necessary, they grant the temporary waiver of public assistance requirements, that would put domestic violence survivors in a further risk. But what are these requirements that can be waived based on family violence options? These can be employment and training requirements if they are unemployed, but they have to do employment and training. But because of the DV cases, they are not able right now to do that. Or child support enforcement and paternity cooperation requirements, which I explained that a little bit, and alcohol and substance abuse assessment and treatment requirements. These are the requirements that can be waived. The first time they are waived, I think it's 4 months, and they can be renewed every 6 months after that. Minor parent living and education requirements, and liens on from real property, and many other requirements that might be exist to receive the unemployment or public benefits. As I mentioned, New York State has some financial relief for domestic violence survivors. It's very sad that I heard from an attorney that it's not that commonly used, and because these options are in the law and they can be actually used with the order of protection, but we probably, like as advocate, don't know about it much, or they're not very practiced. But based on the Family Code Section 8 law, a perpetrator or abuser can be directed to pay financial restitution to survivor up to $10,000. They can be directed to cover the survivor's medical bill and medical insurances, and or be required to the abuser to pay the survivor's legal fees that happen in obtaining an order of protection. Um, so I just put this here as information for you. This can be part of a final disposition in a cases of family violence proceeding, and it can really help survivors, to restitute some money that they have lost. So with that, we want to enter into a topic of pros and cons of disclosure. Disclosing the abuse to one to a trusted friend is so much different from disclosing it to employers, to community organizations, and network of friends. Survivors need to talk to their advocate to see if this is a really safe option for them, because sometimes disclosing the abuse might cause, some outcomes, some consequences, like it might result in referral to Child Protective Services or CPS. Um, it can cause discrimination on work and housing and limited access to services. I can say in New York State, based on the law, there shouldn't be any discriminatory act against domestic violence survivors and because of their situation in the workplaces. And based on the federal law, any discrimination under the housing is actually prohibited. So this is like options that advocates need to know about. If you need more information about this, you can reach out to us. And as I mentioned, nowadays some employers provide paid safe sick leave for victims, which can be really different in every state. And you can explore to see if something like that exists or it is in your state. But what are the privacy protection that survivors can take? Survivors can keep their address confidential by getting a PO box, and because New York State has the address confidentiality program, I provided a link here. But if you also need more information, you can reach out to us later about this opportunity. They can block online or automated access to their social security number. For that, they need to go to a governmental website, contact the website, which I provided a link here, and block any access to their social security number. They need to change their password in all their accounts and use two-step verification logins. Two-step verification is in a situation that you would enter your password and then you would need a code either being emailed to you or texted to you or called to you, so you can like log in your account. A lot of the banks actually have this option. They're very protected, but definitely if they have it and you're not setting it up, use it and set up in your accounts. They need to try to reduce their number of accounts in their name and amount of information that exists about them online, which I will explain this in two slides from here. What about identity theft? The interesting thing about identity theft is a lot of people think that a stranger from another planet or another country or another city will come and would steal our identity and will steal our money. Well, that's not a situation or answer all the time. For survivors of domestic violence, identity theft happen in their relationship and in their marriage. The person who we are in the relationship with has a lot of information. They know all our personal information, probably social security number. They know the name, they know to answers to a lot of security information. So it's very easy for them to take over an account and spend on a line of your credit, which it's like a course debt. Or it's very easy for them to use this data that they have and open a new credit or impersonate them, and do some shopping on behalf of them with a new line of credit with their name. So the identity theft, it's not just for the strangers, it happens in the relationship. Um, when we see a case of identity theft, we probably need a police report. I've heard that referral to police is not always helpful because some policies, I mean, there should be more education around that, but the law enforcement think that if you live with someone and they use your money or your information to buy something, it's actually something legal, which is not. And they wouldn't start investigation to do a police report. So if that's not happening and if there is like issues around that, you can refer them to FTC, the website, and they can file a complaint or they can report a case of identity theft. One other resource that they can use is Identity Theft Resource Center, which has a lot of information and referral about how to act on a case of, identity theft. As I mentioned, we have a lot of data and information about ourselves online. The personal data we put online is very vulnerable. It makes the case of identity theft or financial abuse very easy. But we all need to be data savvy. We all need to be careful about giving away our social security number, email address, phone number, addresses, or anything to businesses. When if it's necessary, you need that probably for opening a bank account. But do you really need that to get like 20%, 10% discount on shopping? Probably not. And you can actually use a fake account, fake email account instead of your real name. We need to limit sharing our information on the internet and on social media, the sensitive information. Definitely shred everything. We get bank statement, we get bills. Probably, a year after, 2 years after, the bills you had is not that, important anymore. You can actually shred them. Um, or we need to understand that we can opt out of, public search websites like white pages. That this is one of the places that people search each other. So you can actually opt out of that. If you need any help or guidance, you can reach out to us about this, or you can unsubscribe from marketing emails. You get emails from Macy's. You get you go shopping and you put your email to get that 10%, and you get emails forever. So you can actually unsubscribe from them. You can change your pins and password. We need to be careful about the phishing method. A lot of banks actually talk about this method a lot for the protection of their clients. Phishing is in a situation that you receive a fake email for instance, from you think that it's your bank, but it's not your bank. It's a third party, and it tells you that your password is expired and you have to enter your password, old password and new password. So you do that, but actually it doesn't change your password, and they get you your password to your bank account, and they steal your information. So you have to be really careful about the emails, texts, and files that you receive. We also need to use the antivirus and anti-malware on our computer, on our phone, and everything that we actually have. Just getting a sip of water. With that, I would like actually to go to one of the handouts that we are going to give you is a short-term planning guidance. And I wanted just to review that and go with the steps that you need to take for the short-term planning. I'm trying to find it, sorry. I think I have to stop the share. No. Sorry for my confusion here. Okay, I hope everybody's seeing this. Okay, great. So in the short-term planning guidance, as a part of safety planning, survivors need to take three main steps. The first one is they need to know how much money or money in their accounts they have, or the amount of cash they have in their hand. So you can like give them this form and ask them to write down the accounts that in their name, in their own name and partner, and in the partner's name, and how much amount of money it is. The second step is um, um, you know, check their income. Are they receiving a paycheck from employer? Is it a TANF, or is it unemployment? Is it child support? So they need to write that down, and then need to find out their immediate expenses, living expenses, which starts with the rent or mortgage, with transportation, debit card, and installation payment, and any food or medical or childcare expenses. The third step is checklist of the document that they need. I mentioned this, but the list is here. You can go through that and ask them if they have access or they can get access to these documents, which is their legal documents, financial documents, health documents, and property documents. And this is the list that it's definitely needed if there are um, whether they are in an abusive relationship or they are living an abusive relationship. You will get a copy of this handout and the resources. Before we are going into a Q&A or any points that have been risen up here, I want to just say that you can find the Allstate Foundation curriculum, the Moving Ahead, on this address that I put here. Definitely check out the National Network to End Domestic Violence Economic Justice Project page. Also check the Center for Survivor Agency and Justice. It's a very good resource for the survivors and advocate. And as I mentioned, there's a link for Matrix, the financial relief matrix, based on each state here, the protection that are available that you can check out um, on your state.
Thank you, Naseem, for all of that information. We do have a few questions, and I understand that just to be cognizant of everybody's time, if you do have to hop off at noon to join another webinar or meeting, this will be recorded and the recording will be shared to cover this portion. So the first question I have is this curriculum intended just to help married people? How does it consider common law couples or LGBTQ plus individuals?
No, this curriculum is not only for the people who are married. Mm, and I have to say, when you go to the next modules, especially the information about the credits and financial planning, this can be useful for anyone that is even single, any kind of relationship. So it's not intended. I know that there was like information about divorce and child support, but even in a cases of cohabitation, there might be some cases of financial abuse and identity theft or coerced debt. So all this information, it can be useful in other type of relationship.
Okay, thank you for that.
Mhm.
Another question that's been posted is an organization that they're running into a problem with crime victim services or opening a bank account, not allowing post office boxes to be listed as their address. Do you have any suggestions for what to use to open these cases or to open accounts?
This is a situation that it really depends on where the bank is. And I don't know if it's in New York State. So I would really recommend to this person to reach out to us individually to provide some information. They might need a little bit of advocacy. Actually, this has happened before. So I would really recommend that they would reach out to us after the webinar. And then we can like make a referral or like find any suggestions that we would have.
There, There's also another question regarding the shredding of documents. Just a clarification point that
Yeah.
you said 2 years.
Mhm.
Many are saying that it was 7 years before and asking to clarify.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the thing. It really depends on the type of document, you know. If this is like your social security statement, you probably need to keep that for longer time, you know, 5 to 7 years. But if this is like, I don't know if it's like a medical bill that you have paid and it's all, you know, out of the your record, so you can just shred that, you know, you don't have to have a big pile of. After 2 years, I think it's very safe to go through your documents and see the things, you know. For instance, your pay stubs, you probably need the last, everybody says the last two, I would say the last 12 pay stubs, but you don't need, I mean, if you want to keep it as your, you know, document or record or treasure, that's okay. But you actually can like shred the ones that you got like 2 years, like 2 years ago, 4 years ago.
Okay. And just to add on a little bit, just to clarify, um, for anyone listening, if any of these items are related to your annual tax returns, the best practice recommendation on that is to maintain all of those records for 7 years.
Yes, that's right.
Um, and are there any specific recommendations for undocumented victims that are off the grid, no social media, no accounts, no credit reports, or any of those materials?
Yes, there are some programs. Actually, one of our programs in New York State, sub-grantees that provide a lot of actually information and support and advocacy for undocumented immigrants. And they know the way to even get an IT number for a survivor to open a bank account and having a line of credit. So if you need more information about that, you can reach out to us about this. But there's actually in New York City, there is this organization that it calls New Economy Project. I'll write that down in the chat box. New Economy Project is a very good resource for immigrants. New Economy Project. And they have a website, they have a lot of information there. So definitely check that out and see. I think there is a lot of useful information. I've gone through it a couple of times and definitely refer you to that. But if you have any other specific question, you can actually reach out to us because there are like lists serve of advocates that are working in different states. And it might be helpful for you to know like information in your own community or in your own local places.
Okay, so we are 5 minutes over time. If there are any additional questions, please feel free to send us emails. And I've also posted in the chat box links to the remainder of the training series for the next 3 sessions. Those, as well as the materials from today, a link to the recording and the presentation slides, will all be included in a follow-up email that you'll be receiving within the week. And again, please feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions. And Naseem, thank you for today's informative session, and have a wonderful rest of your
Yeah,
day,
sure.
everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation, your attendance, and for your concentration. We'll try to answer the question. I saw some question in Q&A, and we will record those, and hopefully we'll get back to you on the information. I'm sorry we didn't have enough time to go through that.